Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm your host, Maria Luz, an astrologer, psychic medium, and certified hypnotist. And today's episode is Dwarf Planet Ceres, Part 1. I've been incorporating some of the dwarf planets and asteroids into astrology readings lately, and while the placement in an individual birth chart often coincides in literal ways with the person's life, these celestial bodies are fascinating on their own. And I've previously written about dwarf planet Sedna, which relates to empowerment and transcendence to a higher state of consciousness. And so today I'm going to focus on dwarf planet Ceres, and I'll talk about the astronomy, the mythology, and of course, the astrological correspondences. And I just find that this full context enables us to have a richer interpretation of the role that Ceres is playing in this current highly dynamic and some might call it painful or turbulent, complicated astrology that's happening now. I'm going to break this up into two parts. As you know, I said goodbye for now, maybe a month and a half or two ago. And I've been just trying to get a feel for the pace that I want to be creating work because I like to do things that have some substance. That's why I'm not on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or any of those, because I just don't personally see the value in putting these little like tidbits of nothing, of like fluff out there. So, sorry, I didn't mean to judge people who do that, but I personally don't see the point for my purpose in life. And so I appreciate it if you've stuck with me and you were like, why is she leaving us? And then all of a sudden I'm back. But I'm just going to see how it goes with my time and energy. But I as I was writing my Substack piece on Ceres and I saw it was going to split up into two parts, it seemed to be something juicy that was worth sharing on the podcast for all of you as well. So it'll be in two parts. And in the next one, I'll jump into the specific correspondences of Ceres in the birth chart. So I'll talk about, you'll want to have your birth chart handy if you can, and look up where Ceres is on your chart so that you can see the sign and the house, because I will break it down by those individual 12 signs and 12 houses. So today I'm going to start with the astronomy. And I must say, if I have to choose which U.S. institution Elonald spares between NASA and Social Security, I might have to choose NASA. Although Ceres was discovered in 1801, NASA's Dawn Orbiter mission, which was there from 2007 to 2018, or it's actually still there, but it just ran out of fuel to be able to send back power, I don't know, to be able to send back images. But anyway, it was sent up there to investigate asteroid Vesta and dwarf planet Ceres, and it taught us much more about Ceres and our solar system. So, if you're old enough, you may recall the stink when Pluto was demoted from a planet in 2006. Well, 200 years prior, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta were demoted from planet status because astronomers caught on that there were just going to be too many of these celestial bodies that they started to label as planets, to call them all planets. So they were demoted way back 200 years ago. And Ceres is the closest dwarf planet to Earth, and it's the largest object in what's called the Kuiper Belt. And this is that asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. And it composes 35% of this asteroid belt's mass. And Ceres actually looks like the mother of the other objects in the Kuiper belt because she's so much larger. And you'll see this mother archetype will come into play in the mythology and the astrology when I talk about that. And Ceres' orbit around the sun is 4.6 Earth years, and it makes this near like perfect. And it has a complex terrain of older and newer features, including a surface of hydrated salts, rocks, clathrates, which are gas molecules trapped in a cage of water molecules, which is pretty cool sounding, and abundant ice at higher altitudes. And the Dawn mission made several discoveries which yielded new thinking about water rich bodies, such as some of the icy moons orbiting the gas giants. And Ceres is believed to come from the outer solar system, which shows that our solar system went through some rejiggering events before reaching the current arrangement. And now onto the mythology, which I summarize from the book Asteroid Goddesses, which is by Demetra George, who I somewhat worship as a goddess, and her co author, Douglas Block. So, the Roman goddess Ceres was originally known as Demeter in Greek mythology, and that's from the ancient form Damater for Earth Mother. And in the Olympian, pantheon, she was a daughter, along with Juno and Vesta, of Saturn and Rhea, who also had sons Jupiter, also known as Zeus, Neptune, and Pluto. And these siblings became the ruling family of ancient Greece. Ceres inhabited both the heavens and the earth, with humanity bestowing the gifts of grain and what's called the Eleusinian rites, also called the Eleusinian mysteries. I'll put a link because they're fascinating. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So Ceres symbolized the fertile soil, which allowed for humanity to be provided for and fed, and so she was worshipped for her nurturance. Of course, the mythology must contain a scandal and or a tragedy, and we have both here. In Homer's hymn to Demeter, the story goes that Ceres was so happy wandering the earth with her daughter Persephone that, as goddess of the harvest, she blessed the earth with an eternal season of harvest, or also called the Golden Age. However, she was extremely possessive of her daughter Persephone, thinking that no man was ever good enough to marry her. Now, Pluto, who would have been Persephone's uncle, gross, but Pluto became obsessed with Persephone. And one day, when she was out picking flowers, out of the view of her mother, a rare occurrence, but she was really like enamored with these narcissus blooms. And then Pluto abducted her, ravished her, and just took her to the underworld to become his wife and queen. And the earth closed up behind him. Now, with the help of the witch Hecate, Ceres learned from Helios, the sun god and also a seer, that Zeus had secretly approved the marriage. So Ceres, and I think Zeus was Persephone's father. And I was trying to get the scoop of, but it seems like Ceres and Zeus were never married, but they had Persephone. So there's the scandal part. So Ceres was so angry, she withdrew from Mount Olympus. She disguised her true identity and she wandered as this bereaved old woman. And the situation was looking really dire, as humanity would suffer famine if Ceres was not appeased because she withdrew all of the golden age and the harvest. So humans prayed to Zeus to intervene, and Zeus realized that, oh, without humans, there will be no one to worship us gods. So he decided to intervene. And eventually, Hermes, also known as Mercury, was sent to the underworld to demand Persephone's release. But Pluto had tricked her into consenting to be his wife forever. And when Ceres learned of this trickery, she once again refused to lift her curse. However, Zeus and their mother, Rhea, negotiated a deal whereby Persephone would spend 6 months of each year in the underworld, alternating with 6 months on the earth. And this led to Earth's spring and summer, during which time everything may grow, and then it grows fallow in autumn and winter as Ceres goes back into mourning. And the myth also raises these themes of loss and return, attachment and separation via Ceres and Persephone's situation. So Ceres also could never accept that her daughter was not entirely hers. This myth was central to the Eleusinian mysteries that I mentioned earlier and was told for thousands of years. And those Eleusinian rites, they initiated people into the divine worship of Ceres and addressed human concern with death by taking them through a mysterious passage of death and rebirth, which are also themes of Pluto, while they were alive. So I can make a connection between our society's aversion to death and therefore aversion to aging and anything that reminds us that we are aging. And this myth will also be reflected in the significations that have accumulated as we've had more experience with Ceres through the signs and the individual charts. Which brings me to the astrology of Ceres. So, the timing of our awareness of Ceres' existence in the sky and accumulated astrological correlations of Ceres' position relative to what was happening here on Earth aligned to starting back in 1801 when Ceres was discovered, the suffrage movement, and then continued on as Ceres made key aspects in the sky to what was happening on Earth in terms of women entering the workforce, the so-called latchkey children generation, of which I am one, divorce, single motherhood, custody arrangements, food-related complexes, and diet culture. And I find it interesting that the latest discoveries of Ceres' composition, which are actually her body, if you think of it, came to us via that Dawn mission in 2015 and 2016 when we had this third wave of body positivity happening. And we also had this theme of echoing the suffrage movement because we had the first woman. And we also can look to the position of Ceres in the sky now. And there have been some interesting aspects with Pluto, starting with last year's meeting when Pluto first moved into the sign of Aquarius. So I mapped out the meetings, or when they're making key aspects to one another, and they have one each year. So I will start with the one from last year, which was on December 8th, 2024. And then I'll also talk about the one happening this upcoming May. And then in future posts, I'll talk about their meetings in 2026 and 2027. And so I like to use the Sabian symbols, and I'm using Dane Rudyard's book, An Astrological Mandala, for information here. And so I'll read their symbols and the keynote, and then I'll just talk a little bit about what I see really being flagged for us to pay attention to. And again, keep in mind those themes of the mythology of Ceres and Pluto, because they have echoes in these Sabian symbols, which were channeled in 1925, and there are echoes to what's happening today, especially with this new administration in the U.S. And just kind of the I guess, the reflection with this like super tech bro who's now kind of part of this new oligarchy that's taken over the country. Okay. So, anyway, this conjunction, and remember, a conjunction is a fusion of energy of the two planets who are meeting together. And this happened at 0 degrees Aquarius. So just as Pluto was entering, and Ceres was also changing signs from Capricorn into Aquarius. The symbol is an old adobe mission in California, And the keynote is the power inherent in all great human worlds to endure far beyond the workers' lifespans. And Dane Rudyard says, it speaks to us of the concretization of an ideal. This also implies the immortalization of an individual within a great collective and cultural enterprise. So at the time the symbols were channeled, this symbol was believed to be a reference to a noble ideal of faith, because if you remember, they were the Spanish missionaries uh, to bring so-called culture and learning and religion to the what they just thought were undeveloped people or undeveloped cultures here. So, but back then, this symbol probably would have been seen as this noble ideal of faith becoming something enduring and beautiful in the form of those adobe missions. But now, we might interpret this as a physical representation of something whose original purpose really requires a more evolved perspective. So, a revisiting of what those ideals that we've made concrete are. Like, are they still ideals? So I see that as being very relevant. And then on May 28th, they make a sextile aspect. And what that's about is really like facilitating the expression of this productivity or this mutual excitation of those planets. So we have Ceres at Aries, 3 degrees, and that symbol is two lovers strolling on a secluded walk. And the keynote is the progressive polarization of energies needed for fulfilling one's life function. And Dane Rudder describes the requirement of bipolar energies to create this resonance working in a dynamic manner, and this moving apart and back together in contact with the surrounding energies of nature. And also, there's a quote here. It introduces the base means, one might say the technique to establish consciousness in the world of duality. So I think there's so much there that moving apart and coming back together echoes the Ceres and Persephone, the bipolar or any kind of polarization strikes a chord with what's happened in our world now, and forgetting to do the part where you come back together and we incorporate our place in the surrounding nature. So there's a lot that's relevant, I think, today in that symbol. And then Pluto's symbol at 3 degrees Aquarius is a Hindu yogi demonstrates his healing powers. And the keynote is the disciplined use of spiritual energies in restoring the natural harmony disturbed by man's inharmonic attempts to transcend nature through mind. So again, already you can kind of see there's a relationship to that Aries symbol about that harmony and the transcend nature type thing. And Rudyard writes, the goal of a true civilization, Western civilization being largely a caricature of it, is the development of a humanity composed of self-motivated and responsible individuals freely associating, fully actualizing the potentialities inherent in the archetype of man. So this is a complex symbol that speaks to this full archetype of what a human is. And this includes the integration of wisdom that we are at once an individual, yet we're not separate from source and all that is, including nature and each other. So it speaks of this duty of those individuals who have worked to personally integrate this spiritual nature to help and bring those others who haven't done that work to help bring them along. And the timing of this meeting of Ceres and Pluto is interesting because Venus will be concluding her retrograde period and will have completed her 8-year journey to the point of that star shape, or some call it a rose shape, that she makes at 2 degrees Aries, which again is super close to where Ceres is making that sextile aspect to Pluto. So that happens on March 22nd when Venus is there. And then this sextile happens just 2 months later. And the symbol for Venus's So for Venus's position is the cameo profile of a man, suggesting the shape of his country. And the keynote is the sustaining power of the whole as the individual identifies themselves with its life. And this symbol incorporates the themes of those symbols for Ceres and Pluto in the sextile. And it speaks to the transcendence of being an individual representation of one's environment to become an agent of the universe, and allow the universe to express itself through the individual here on earth in an outward manifestation for the highest good of the collective. So, those are, again, very um, heavy and complex themes that we're seeing raised here, which I believe it's following on our time when the nodes were in Aries and Libra, and we were really being forced to look at authenticity, to stop masking with one another, to really think about what it means to be human, so that we are now ready for this kind of next level conversation. So that is where I will leave you today. I thank you for listening. I would love for you to rate, review, or share this podcast. And best of all, I would love for you to join me over on Substack. It's really fun there. And I'm trying to get more engagement by starting different types of chats and live Zoom meetings. So hope to see you over there. Thanks so much. And I will catch you later.